On tonight's episode of Rainy Night Explorations of Derelict Pieces of Abandoned Stereo Equipment, I have this Technics stereo cassette deck from 1988. This is the RS-T911. This was just an average deck, and it was set out for the trash collection around 4 to 5 years ago, believe it or not. And I had plans of taking a look at this thing and evaluating whether or not it was worth saving. And then life got in the way, and I ended up just shelving that idea. And for the first time in a long time, I actually found myself up in the attic looking for something unrelated when I came across this deck just sitting there gathering dust. So I decided to dig it out of storage and just see and finally put it to rest whether or not this thing is salvageable. And when I got it, the metal case was actually loose, just sitting with the screws inside the actual cassette deck. And it had this Sony Walkman branded Type 2 chrome tape, 90-minute tape, which advertises quick access and a short leader. And Deck B doesn't seem to have any major issues with it. Of course, it could use a new set of belts. They're really worn out. However, Deck A seems to be the one that is troubled by a number of ailments, not the least of which being somebody going in here and being a bit heavy-handed. And it looks like they probably attempted to try to change the belts on their own, and they just gave up halfway through. A lot of the screws I was able to relocate and reinstall using the other one as a template. And there does exist a downloadable service manual for this unit, but it's, I believe, through it's hidden behind a paywall. At least you need a membership to this specific website to download it, and I don't know what that actually entails. I haven't gotten that far because this is just a preliminary look at this cassette deck, again, just to evaluate if it's even worth saving, because I have a number of other ones that are in working condition. I really don't need another one, but if this one is serviceable, then I don't see any reason why I can't bring it back to life. But this definitely would have been used with a component-based system of the time. Of course, you have your customary line-in, line-out jacks, but you've got the remote connection here to turn this thing on and off and operate, I believe, a number of its playback controls using a remote control with the requisite stereo receiver. And you can see on the front that it's definitely lived a hard life, ridden hard and put away wet. It's got scratches all over. The actual case itself is pretty scuffed and rusty, and the screws are no better. This definitely shows signs of corrosion being used in probably somewhere like a garage, a very damp environment. And it's kind of interesting. I wonder if this is actually part of the design or this is wear. You can see how the plastic is actually worn flat here. So I don't know if those are indents or if those indents are from the factory as part of the design, or that was just from heavy use, because there's really no rhyme or reason to it. See, this one has one by the play button, and then this one is, I don't know what's going on with that. And I wonder if one of those screws actually got bound up in the mechanism somehow, because these controls are all depressed. Nothing's going on when this thing gets connected to power, whereas these, you can see I can click it. Everything is operating as it should, or almost as it should. That should stop the play button and disengage it. But it isn't. But it could be that it requires power, so. Of course, as fate would have it, I only have a figure-of-8 power cord that goes with a laptop power supply. And of course, they never give you enough cord. It's not big enough, so I actually have to resort to using this trash can as a very makeshift table so that I can actually connect this thing up to power. Well, just as I suspected, it did need power to disengage playback. So this deck does appear to work, but for some reason it's a little finicky when it comes to stopping playback. And we do have signs of life on the view meter and the tape type selector. The spotlight on this camera is actually washing it out, but you can see it is lighting up amber. You can see a number of trimmers in here which are actually conveniently labeled as to what function they serve. Record gain, playback gain, left and right. I wonder, see, this one says A and B. Oh, so see, this must be for the playback of the deck A, deck B, the left and right channels, and then the bias adjustments over here. You can actually see a date code on the motor here of April 16th of 87. Same thing over here on this one. And I think what I'm going to do is actually try to take apart this mechanism and remove it and see what's the cause of everything being bound up here. It shouldn't be too difficult. I think there's a total of like 4 screws that hold this in. You've got that one there, here, there's 2 down there, and then another 2 on this side. That rain's really starting to pick up out there. So I'm going to try taking those screws out and see if I can figure out what's causing the problem with this deck. I'm finding quite a bit of broken plastic in the process, so it doesn't look promising for this thing. The tape type selector microswitches are pretty badly mangled. So somebody was certainly in here, no doubt, trying to change these belts, and then when they saw just how involved a process that actually is, they just gave up and probably slapped this thing together, barely even put the screws back, and they just called it quits and gave up. Well, hope springs eternal. I was able to get 2 screws in for now, just holding this in place for testing, and it looks like the controls are actually working. Are almost working. I think I know why the door isn't opening on deck A. If you notice, this is deck B right now, and I'm pressing the eject button, and you see that little plastic piece, a finger moving up and down. There's a spring that holds it on, and then the door opens. Whereas on this one, that piece of plastic is there, but the little metal spring that goes right on the little tiny piece right there and then hooks into that hole right above my finger is missing. So when you press eject, nothing happens. You see now, if I press the eject button, it pushes up on this plastic slide and then releases the door open. Whereas on this deck, that piece of metal, somebody actually put this slide over it instead of it sitting below it. So now it's locking this whole thing in place, not allowing us to eject the tape. So I'm going to take these screws out and see if I can relocate that down here. But I'm not holding my breath because this is a sign of probably a lot more troubles to come. Here's a better view of what I was trying to demonstrate before. You see that little piece of metal supposed to be below this plastic slider, and instead somebody must have taken this off for whatever reason, probably trying to get at the mechanism to change the belts, and then they forgot how it went and they just put it on any old way. So now the tape, if you were to put a tape in there, would be stuck in there eternally. So it looks like I got to remove these 2 screws, and then I'll be able to remove this piece of plastic and hopefully be able to move this piece of metal down to where it should go. And I better close that window because it sounds like there's a hurricane bearing down. Alright, I was able to relocate that, but we are missing a spring here that connects from that hole over to here to provide tension on this piece. Well, we have success. Even though we're missing that spring for tension, doesn't seem like we need it, because we're now able to eject deck A, just like deck B. Well, this has got to win some awards. I've got this sitting on top of the trash can, and I've got its audio output wired to this RCA to 3.5mm jack, connected into the aux input of this radio just for testing purposes. And we've got loose screws floating around everywhere in here. Not for me, but by the previous owner, but I'm sure that could probably be a problem given the right circumstances. I'm going to put a commercially pre-recorded tape in here, and I really hope this doesn't chew it up. Tape head actually doesn't look that bad, nor does it on deck. Deck B is a little worn out, but just see what happens here. Actually, in case this thing does decide to eat the tape, I'll try deck B, because that one was never touched. Press play. Wow, it's actually playing. Wow, that is quite remarkable. So it's actually playing right now. Level meters are responding. Definitely sounds 100 times better with Dolby B off, because I'm sure this thing has never gotten a good cleaning. And here we go on deck A, and I really hope this thing doesn't eat this tape, because I don't know, that would just be a horrible thing to witness. It actually has a number of good songs on it. Oh, come on. Why do you keep popping open? I press play, it's not doing anything. And this door keeps popping open, so that probably has something to do with that spring that we saw before. Yeah, I'm sure that's got something to do with it. The belt isn't even on the flywheel, it's slipped completely off. Well, here we are a number of days later. This thing was put on the back burner yet again because a number of other life's priorities took precedence. And I'm having a few reservations about trying to get this thing back up and running for use with my stereo system. I was able to get it to play, albeit not very well. As discussed in the previous portion of this, the first portion of this video, the belts need to be replaced, and this definitely seems like one of those really un-user serviceable friendly designs. Gotta love made-up words to describe your frustrations, but they really didn't intend for this thing to be easily serviceable and have the belts replaced. And there is a service manual that would likely go into detail about the process, but it is behind, I think, either a paywall or you have to be like a contributing member to the website. I could be somewhat wrong on that, but there's only one website that had it available. And I'm losing interest in this cassette deck because it just seems to have been mistreated in its previous life. For example, I could definitely try to fix it, although there's no promises, but you can see how mangled the little metal finger is that holds the tape in place, and also the automatic tape selector microswitches are really mangled beyond repair. There's loose screws floating around all over this thing. The mechanism, the door, has a nasty habit of popping open rather violently while it's playing. So I don't see any way to quickly and easily remedy that short of finding that exact spring. I did try cleaning the tape heads, but they seem to be very worn out because even on like really high quality commercially pre-recorded tapes with Dolby B, they just end up sounding very muddy being played back on this deck, even with Dolby B turned off, so you kind of cheat the system in a way and you get better treble response if you're playing back a Dolby B tape without Dolby B noise reduction. You get better treble and high frequency range, and I think I can see why this deck definitely got a fair bit of use. You can see how worn out that pinch roller is. And I'm going to lean toward the wear down here being actual physical wear and not by design, because I just noticed up here, that's definitely a chip or a gash in the plastic, and that looks exactly the same as all of these indentations down here. So somebody really got their money's worth out of this thing. Probably could be fixed and brought back around, but yeah, I don't think it's really worth it. It's in pretty rough shape, and I could go through all the effort of tracking down all the screws and the proper belts for this thing, and it's still not going to help me with the worn out tape heads that this unit has. So you can't save them all, but I certainly tried.